Hey there, welcome back to Rhythms of the Refuge. I'm Kelly Blackledge, Park Ranger, coming to you from Tamarac National Wildlife Refuge. And the rhythm we're feeling these days is summer berries. It's a great time of year to kind of taste your way through the refuge. And actually, this time of year, all of these berries you are able to collect on the refuge. In fact, nuts, berries, and mushrooms can be collected on the refuge. So I wanted to share with you today just some of those berries that you're probably seeing out there, some of my favorites. So let's take a look at some of these berries. Again, nuts, berries, and mushrooms can be collected on the refuge as long as it's for personal use. So one of the berries that you see most often on the refuge are dogwoods. Not edible berries, these are, but dogwoods are really prevalent throughout our woods. Whether it's along a shore or deep into the woods, there's dogwoods everywhere. And in the spring, you've probably got a chance to enjoy all the blooms that come with dogwoods. And one of the most popular dogwood that we have is our red twig dogwood or red osier dogwood that you can tell because of the red twigs, of course, and you'll see those in the spring. Some of those, as the plant gets a little older, it might not always be this brilliant red, but certainly in the winter or like in November, when the leaves start to drop, those, and even in deep into the winter, you can see these red twigs, which are just beautiful. It kind of creates this really great year-long view when you have red twig dogwoods in your area. And of course, these also develop berries, and usually those berries are kind of whitish color. They can turn a little purpley as well. But we also have gray dogwoods that are kind of deep into the woods. There's lots of different kinds of dogwoods that we have in Minnesota. This one, you can see not the red stem here, but definitely a lot of berries on the gray dogwood. And you'll see these are more in the upland areas, whereas the red twig dogwood is often near more marshy areas. And pagoda dogwood, another one that we have a lot of. One thing that I notice about pagoda dogwood are the leaves. You can see how big these leaves are. Of course, this one happens to be growing in the shade, and so those leaves got really big, as do many plants when they are struggling to get a lot of sunshine in the shade. But the veins on the pagoda dogwood are much deeper, a lot more pronounced. And this one too has the same kind of berries. It'll turn kind of purpley later in the fall. And I love the little twigs that the berries come out on. Those are just really pretty as well. Now, those berries disappear pretty quickly. Lots of wildlife enjoy the berries of the woods, as do we. But these birds, as you probably recognize, the robin, bluebirds, the cedar waxwing, and the brown bird there is a brown thrasher. So lots of different birds that will eat the berries. And so a lot of times we don't even get a chance to enjoy some of these beautiful scenes of berries on our dogwoods because they get eaten. Well, there's lots of other berries, though, that we can eat as well. And the easy one that always comes to mind for me is wild grape. Now, the grapes aren't going to be as sweet as some of the store-bought grapes that you have, but grapes are all over the place. It's some people might call it a kind of a ferocious vine that takes over, and you do have to kind of be careful because it can grow really fast. But there are, if you're quick enough to get them before the birds, berries on these wild grapes that you can collect. Here they're a little bit green, and of course they'll turn purpley in color. But again, it can wrap around trees, and you don't want to have grapes that choke out trees that are trying to grow in your yard or something like that either. But you can kind of redirect those vines and have a really great stash of berries in your backyard as well. And there's all kind of, like I said, not only the birds will go for them pretty quickly before they're ripe, but deer and lots of other animals too. Well, another easy one of my favorites is raspberry, and we mostly have a lot of red raspberry. There's also a black raspberry in Minnesota, but raspberries are all over. In fact, they kind of like disturbed areas too. So sometimes you can find a nice big stash of raspberries, a nice big whole bunch of them. Gosh, I'm eating raspberries through the refuge whenever I can as I'm walking down trails. There aren't very many places that you can go where there's not raspberries close by. So grab them while you can, because again, these will disappear, but oh, so scrumptious. When they're bright red like this and they fall, they just drop off the plant really easily. You know it's ripe when it just drops right off. Now the black raspberries, when they're red like this, they won't come off the plant very easy until they're a darker color, get that dark blackish kind of color. But the red raspberries, as they're ripe, just drop right off. So pretty. Now you might have noticed raspberries, if you remember, have leaflets, 3 little leaflets. So that's the shape of their leaf. Now this one, maybe you recognize this one. This is a close-up. So it's a leaf that's only about an inch wide or so, but it's got those cute little lobes on it. This one is gooseberry. We also have a currant that might be looks similar, but gooseberry is also all over the place. This will have a very prickly shrub stems to it, as does raspberry. But gooseberry, we have several different kinds of gooseberries, and a lot of the gooseberry that you'll see has really prickly stems, as I mentioned before, but these cute little lobed leaves on it, so you'll know that. So this is probably the most common gooseberry. You'll see it's a nice smooth berry, but we also have prickly gooseberry. You can sort of see it in this picture where those berries have prickles on them. And they do get a little bit darker color. The animals don't get to them first. And these are edible, and those prickles will kind of cook right out if you're cooking the berries. So also a good one to eat. If you're lucky enough, you might be in an area, although generally speaking, these grow kind of north and east of the refuge a little bit more prominently. These are the blueberries. So scrumptious to find fresh blueberries. Oh, another one of my favorite here is cranberry. Now I like this one because this one stays pretty through for quite a while, even into the winter. Cranberry can be kind of tart, and so the birds and animals don't eat this quite as prevalent. This one, I think the leaf looks a little like a maple leaf to me. It's great for wildlife, butterflies and bees, and so they do enjoy it, but they don't usually take those berries off so quickly. So it's pretty easy to see these bright red, beautiful berries still on the shrub, even into the winter. And our common cranberry is the high bush cranberry, a great planting for your backyard as well. Elderberry. Oh, we have elderberry on the refuge too. Now, elderberry is neat because there are so many berries. So when you see it first bloom in the spring, there are just flowers everywhere. And this one, you can see each leaf, there's a lot of, it's not just a single leaf, right? It's a compound leaf here. So elderberry is pretty common, and whoa, you can get a lot of berries off one bush. All these tiny little elderberries. You've probably heard of elderberry syrup, and some of the health values for eating elderberry does seem to boost people's immune system quite well. So a great berry to have. Oh, here's a good example of how they kind of come in these big clumps, but they might be a little flat on the bottom, so you can kind of see the shape of the clump is different, compared to a cranberry or, of course, individual berries that you might find. So watch for elderberries. They're a little darker in color. You might see a few service berries, or it's also called Juneberry, a native plant to Minnesota as well. This is often planted as an ornamental in yards. A great little tree to have if you have serviceberry. Now, one of the more common, again, berries that we usually get questions about is the chokecherry. There are so many chokecherries on the refuge. So the blooms look like this. They have, you know, those clusters of flowers hanging off the branches. And chokecherries you'll see in these long, skinny clusters. So not like the really big cluster of the elderberry or this one also, I seem to find it mostly around the edges of marshes and lakes around the refuge, but lots of chokecherry out there. Yeah, here's one along near a marsh here. Or actually, this one is kind of around the Ottertail River, just along the banks of the Ottertail River. So you can collect all of these berries. It's pretty easy. Just bring a little ice cream bucket or something like that. You don't need any fancy equipment. And the berries, if they are ripe and ready to eat, they're going to fall off as you gently touch them and get them into your bucket. So we do allow the collection for personal use, not like for commercial use of berries. Yeah, not just birds like berries, but there is a season where bears love to eat the berries as well. So just keep in mind, you might be sharing your stash of berries out there with not just tiny birds, but also some of our larger animals on the refuge. So, berries, a great thing to enjoy throughout the summer season, a neat rhythm that happens on the refuge. And if you're like me and you love jam, what's your jam? You might enjoy collecting berries on the refuge. Or when you're going on a hike, give one a try, as long as you know for sure what kind of plant it is. Some of the berries that we have on the refuge are not edible, so do be sure that you're 100% sure you know what that plant is. The refuge is open. All the trails, the fishing accesses, hunting in the fall. So although the buildings aren't open right now, be sure to come out to the refuge and get some nature in. We'll see you next time.